Imagine building an empire brick by brick, only to watch it collapse in an instant, not because of betrayal, not because of competitors, but because of one small, hidden clause buried deep in a contract. This isn't fiction. It's the shocking reality of a man who thought he had secured his kingdom, but instead, unknowingly signed his downfall. And what happened next left everyone stunned. Welcome to today's story, where the line between power and ruin was written in fine print. If you love uncovering the hidden truths behind the world's most dramatic legal and financial battles, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We bring you stories that reveal how one moment, one decision, one overlooked detail can change everything. Hit that subscribe button now so you never miss the daily stories we uncover. He was known as a visionary, a leader who could turn ideas into gold. From the outside, it looked like nothing could break him. His empire spanned industries, real estate, technology, even luxury brands. He wasn't just wealthy, he was untouchable. But as the saying goes, the higher you rise, the farther you fall. The downfall didn't come with a scandal splashed across headlines, at least not at first. It started quietly, in a courtroom filled with thick folders of contracts, each page carrying weight he had overlooked. And in one of those contracts, in one single line of text, his fate was sealed. The clause was hidden, almost invisible, among the legal jargon. To most, it looked harmless, but when triggered, it would give his rival unprecedented power over his assets. He had signed the deal years before, dismissing it as just another agreement. He never thought it would matter. But time has a way of making forgotten mistakes resurface. His empire began to wobble when disputes arose. Small cracks appeared. Lawsuits, claims, challenges. But the clause transformed those cracks into an earthquake. Suddenly, the rights to his most profitable business weren't his anymore. His rival swooped in, legally and ruthlessly, and the courtroom echoed with gasps when the judge declared the clause valid and binding. Friends turned into strangers. Business partners walked away. Investors panicked. The man who once inspired awe was now fighting for survival. Every asset he thought was secure slipped away, one after another, and the empire he built over decades collapsed in months. But the real twist wasn't just about money, it was about betrayal, because the person who had ensured that clause was included, the one who had waited patiently for it to take effect, wasn't a stranger. It was someone from his own circle, someone he trusted. The hidden clause wasn't just a legal detail, it was a trap, and once it snapped shut, there was no escape. What happens when trust meets greed, when ambition blinds judgment? Stay with me, because the shocking truth behind who set him up and why will leave you questioning everything you think you know about loyalty, power, and success. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as the judge's words echoed. The clause was binding, enforceable, and devastating. The empire he had built with his own two hands was slipping away faster than he could comprehend. He tried to keep his composure, but the color drained from his face. Those sitting behind him, once his allies, watched in stunned silence. Some pitied him, others smirked quietly, knowing they might benefit from his downfall. Outside, the media circled like vultures. Headlines were being written in real time. Business tycoon loses fortune overnight, and the clause that crushed a king. Cameras flashed, and microphones pushed toward his face. But he had no words, because how do you explain losing everything because of a single, overlooked line in a contract? His lawyers scrambled, searching desperately for loopholes, but the clause was airtight. It wasn't vague or open to interpretation. It was deliberate precise, and lethal. The rival, who had once been a minor player in the industry, now had the legal upper hand, and with it, control of the crown jewel of the empire. Behind closed doors, he began connecting the dots. The contract hadn't been random. Years ago, when the deal was signed, it was suggested by someone he trusted deeply, a close advisor, a man who had been by his side through victories and failures, someone he never suspected would betray him. But betrayal often wears the mask of friendship until the moment it strikes. Slowly, the truth came to light. The rival and the trusted advisor had been working together all along. That hidden clause wasn't an accident. It was planted, designed to wait silently until the right time to activate. And the right time had finally come. As the revelations mounted, his emotions swung violently between disbelief, rage, and regret. He thought of the years he had spent building his empire, the long nights, the sacrifices, the risks, and now it was all being stripped away, not by market crashes or natural disasters, but by his own blindness to the fine print. The empire crumbled piece by piece. The luxury estates were sold, the private jets grounded, the companies he had nurtured torn apart and absorbed by his rival's growing empire. It was the kind of downfall people whispered about for decades, a cautionary tale of arrogance and oversight. But what hurt him the most wasn't the money or even the empire. It was the betrayal. To know that someone he had trusted with his vision, his secrets, his dreams, had plotted this all along, it broke something inside him. Late at night, he would sit alone, replaying the moment he signed that contract. If only he had read it more carefully. If only he had questioned it. If only he had realized that the pen in his hand wasn't signing a deal, it was signing his destruction. But the story wasn't over yet, because as much as his empire had been destroyed, he wasn't ready to disappear quietly. The same ambition that built his fortune still burned inside him. And what he uncovered next, about the people who betrayed him, would shift the battle into a whole new arena. He sat in silence, the walls of his once grand office now bare, stripped of the trophies and accolades that once spoke of power. But behind his quiet eyes burned something dangerous, a resolve. Losing his empire had wounded him, but it had also awakened a side of him that no one expected. If they thought the hidden clause would be the end of his story, they were wrong. Through scraps of paperwork, whispered rumors, and late-night digging, he began piecing together the truth. The betrayal wasn't just about one clause in a contract, it was about years of manipulation. His trusted advisor hadn't just betrayed him once. He had been feeding information to the rival for years. Meetings, strategies, upcoming deals, all leaked, all used to weaken him slowly until the final blow could be delivered. The empire's collapse was orchestrated like a symphony, and he had been blind to the conductor standing right beside him. But now, with nothing left to lose, he started to fight back. He uncovered emails, secret bank accounts, and private meetings that connected his advisor to the rival in ways the world had never seen. What was once a business battle was now shaping into something darker, a case of fraud, conspiracy, and calculated betrayal. He took the evidence to his legal team, the very same lawyers who had been powerless against the clause. But now, with betrayal laid bare, they had a new weapon, a countersuit. This wasn't just about reclaiming wealth. It was about exposing the rot that had been festering in his empire for years. The courtroom became the stage for Act Two of the drama. Reporters filled the gallery, hungry for more headlines. His rival walked in with arrogance, confident that victory had already been secured. But as the documents were presented, the atmosphere shifted. Emails showing secret communications, financial transfers that lined pockets, and then the revelation that the advisor had profited personally from the downfall. Gasps filled the room. The rival's smugness cracked. The story was no longer just about a businessman careless with contracts. It was about betrayal at the deepest level, and a scheme that reached far beyond what anyone imagined. The judge's face hardened as the evidence stacked higher and higher. The courtroom, once a place of humiliation for him, was now turning into a theater of redemption. And though he hadn't yet regained his empire, he was regaining something more important, his dignity. But redemption always comes at a cost. While the world now sympathized with him, the empire he had built was still gone. Rebuilding would take years, perhaps a lifetime. Yet in that moment, as the truth burned brightly for all to see, he realized something he had forgotten in his pursuit of power. Empires can be destroyed, but a man's spirit cannot, unless he allows it. Still, the final chapter was yet to be written, because the judgment that followed would not only determine his future, but also send a message to anyone who thought hidden clauses and secret betrayals could remain buried forever. The gavel struck for the final time, and the judge's voice carried through the silent courtroom. The hidden clause, the one that had stripped away an empire, was indeed valid. His fortune, his companies, his empire, it was all gone. But the betrayal that orchestrated it would not go unpunished. The rival, once smug and untouchable, now sat pale, knowing the truth had been exposed. And the advisor, the man who once stood closest to him, was left to face the consequences of his deceit. The verdict was bittersweet. He would never regain the full height of his empire. The years of work, the fortune amassed, the status he held, all of it had slipped beyond reach. But in its place came something no amount of money could buy. Justice. Fraud was proven. Collusion was undeniable. The world now knew the truth. He was no longer a careless tycoon, undone by arrogance. He was a man betrayed, but not broken. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed wildly, reporters shouting over one another. But this time, he wasn't hiding his face. He stood tall, with a calm strength in his eyes. He hadn't won everything, but he hadn't lost himself. And perhaps, in some strange way, this was his true beginning. Because power and money, as intoxicating as they are, can vanish in an instant. An empire can fall with a single, overlooked line in a contract. But character, the will to rise again after betrayal, that is something no one can take away. He had been forced to watch his empire crumble, but in the rubble, he found clarity. Clarity about trust, loyalty, and the price of greed. And maybe that was the secret hidden in the clause all along. It destroyed what he built, yes, but it revealed what truly matters. Empires can be rebuilt. Trust can be regained. And sometimes the fall is what makes a man stronger than he ever was at the top. As you take this story with you, remember this. In life, the biggest traps are often hidden where you least expect them. Not just in contracts, but in people's hearts. Be careful who you trust. Read the fine print in everything, on paper and in relationships, because one hidden detail can change the course of your life forever. Thank you for staying with us until the end. If this story resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to our channel for daily videos filled with powerful lessons, real stories, and truths that inspire. Your support helps us bring these hidden tales to light. And always keep this in mind. Empires may fall, fortunes may fade, but the truth will always